Puerto Rico safe? Generally, yes.
Since Hurricane Maria tore through Puerto Rico as a near Category 5 hurricane, the hurricane killed at least 3,000 Puerto Ricans, even more by some counts.
Fam. When people talk about traveling, especially to places outside the mainland US, they usually focus on the beaches, the nightlife, the resorts, and the good times. What they don't talk about enough is how fast things can go left when you move like you're still at home. Different places move by different rules, especially after dark. And if you don't understand that, it can cost you everything. In Puerto Rico, for example, there's something a lot of visitors don't realize until it's too late. Late at night, in certain areas, people don't sit at red lights. Not because they don't know the law, but because stopping can make you a target. Locals understand that some intersections become hunting grounds after hours, where cars that stop are easier to approach, easier to rob, and easier to trap. It's not about breaking rules, it's about survival. That's the part tourists don't always see. They arrive relaxed, flashing money, flashing jewelry, moving loud, posting locations, and assuming vacation energy protects them. It doesn't. The same red flags people ignore back home follow them wherever they go. Different city, same mistakes. And within the last 24 hours, that reality claimed another life. A once rising rapper traveled to Puerto Rico looking for peace of mind. He wanted a reset, a break from pressure, maybe a little fun. But after spending the night at a strip club, openly displaying jewelry, broadcasting money, and drawing attention to himself, he was followed when he left. Not long after, he was robbed and killed. Today, we're going to identify who this man was, pay our respects, and go over the details that have been released to the public so far. More importantly, we're going to talk about what can be learned from this situation, especially when traveling, whether overseas, to the islands, or even just to another city in the US. Locals know the difference between danger and safety, even when outsiders can't see it. They know which intersections are watched, which lights are safe to stop at, and which ones you slow down for and keep rolling. In certain neighborhoods, police response times can be long, especially in high crime zones, so people don't rely on help coming fast. Instead, they rely on awareness. That's why, late at night, red lights are treated more like yield signs. You slow down, scan your surroundings, and move accordingly. Not because Puerto Rico is lawless everywhere, but because enforcement isn't consistent across the island. Now, for people wondering if Puerto Rico is dealing with cartel-style violence like parts of Mexico, the answer is no in that sense. But organized drug crews absolutely exist. Puerto Rico plays a major role as a drug transshipment hub between South America and the mainland United States. Because it's a U.S. territory, movement of people and goods is easier, which makes it a prime route for cocaine, fentanyl, firearms, and cash. That reality brings a certain level of street activity that tourists don't always account for. This is where being flashy becomes dangerous. Wearing heavy jewelry, expensive watches, designer bags, hopping out of rental cars, speaking with a clear mainland accent, all of that immediately labels you.
And significantly impacted, if not obliterated, the island's electorate.
Not as someone hated, but as someone profitable, someone with money, someone not from here, someone who doesn't know the rules. And in the street mindset, that equals opportunity. Criminals aren't looking to crash out for no reason. They're looking for low-risk, high-reward situations. Tourists fit that profile perfectly. They don't know which streets to avoid. They don't recognize warning signs. They don't know when to keep moving or when to blend in. That's why locals move low-key at night, even if they have money. Flash attracts attention, and attention attracts problems. Puerto Rico may be part of the United States, but in many areas, it feels neglected, under-resourced, and left to fend for itself. That gap between paradise and reality is where a lot of visitors get caught slipping. And sometimes, like in this case, the consequences are permanent. This is the uncomfortable truth that a lot of people don't want to talk about. Puerto Rico is a U.S. territory. The people there are U.S. citizens, born American, pay federal taxes in different forms, serve in the military, Yet they cannot vote for the president who makes decisions that directly affect their lives. That lack of political power shows up in real ways. Infrastructure is underfunded. Federal response during crises is often delayed, watered down, or tangled in politics.
I want the thick one, I want the thick one, I want the thick one.
After Hurricane Maria, the world saw it clearly. Slow aid, excuses from officials, a collapsing power grid, shortages of basic resources, and entire communities left to fend for themselves. Years later, some of those wounds still haven't healed. When systems break down like that, it creates pressure. Economic pressure, social pressure. And when opportunity is scarce, crime becomes one of the few options left for some people trying to survive. That doesn't excuse violence, but it explains why tourists sometimes walk into situations they don't understand. Puerto Rico looks like paradise on Instagram, but beneath that beauty are real struggles that outsiders rarely see. Now let's talk about the young man at the center of this story. He was from West Orlando, Florida, an aspiring rapper who had already made a name for himself before he was even 30. He was only 21 years old and went by the name Scoop Banks. Years ago, Scoop had momentum. He had millions of views online and caught real attention in the music industry. One of his biggest moments came when he collaborated on a song with the late J.D. Youngin, a move that put his name in conversations nationwide. That interview was 7 years ago, and since then, Scoop Banks had taken a different route. He wasn't chasing constant clout anymore. He was trying to pivot, become an entrepreneur, build something sustainable, and step away from the spotlight. But that changed when he decided to travel to Puerto Rico, partly to celebrate, partly to clear his mind, and partly just to enjoy life. On February 2nd, 2026, a friend of Scoop's went to Facebook and shared devastating news. He said Scoop was in Puerto Rico trying to find peace with a small group of people. They were wearing jewelry, enjoying nightlife, moving like tourists. After leaving a strip club, they were followed. According to the initial reports, they were riding in an Uber when the robbery happened. Scoop was one of the people killed during that robbery. When people checked Scoop Banks's Instagram page, his last story hit differently. It felt eerie in hindsight, like a final snapshot of someone who didn't know what was coming. Shortly after, the same friend clarified that some details in early articles were incorrect, but the core truth remained. Scoop Banks was murdered in Puerto Rico during a robbery. Local reports quoted authorities saying that 2 individuals were shot at the intersection of Roberto H. Todd Avenue and Manuel Fernandez Juncos Avenue. One person was killed, another was wounded by gunfire. That's where celebration turned into tragedy. A young man who went looking for peace ended up becoming another reminder of how quickly things can go wrong when you don't understand the environment you're stepping into. The shooting happened along John F. Kennedy Avenue near Stop 18 in Santurce, San Juan, an area that stays active late into the night, but also carries its own risks after dark. According to preliminary information released by authorities, at approximately 1:16 a.m., multiple calls came into the 911 emergency system reporting gunfire and injured victims in the area. When officers arrived on scene, they discovered one victim, a 23-year-old man, suffering from a gunshot wound to the arm. He was conscious and able to communicate. Emergency responders transported him to a nearby hospital, where he was listed in stable condition.
Why they trying to change my ways? Stuck in this phase, I'm dying slowly trying to.
His injuries, while serious, were not life-threatening, and doctors were able to intervene in time. The second victim was in far worse condition. He was found inside a Toyota Sienna, a vehicle registered with a private transportation service, later confirmed to be Uber. Despite emergency efforts, this victim died while receiving medical treatment at a hospital. Authorities later identified him as a 27-year-old man from the state of Florida who had been visiting Puerto Rico for only 3 days. He was in the vehicle alongside the injured victim at the time of the robbery. The Uber driver was also a victim in this incident. Reports indicate that he was physically assaulted during the robbery. After the attack, it is alleged that the driver fled the scene on foot and made his way to the Santurce police station, where he sought help before being transported to a medical facility. It remains unclear exactly how he managed to get there or the full extent of his injuries, but investigators confirmed he survived. One critical detail that stands out is how the victims reached the hospital. According to police reports, it was the injured victim himself who drove the vehicle to a nearby hospital in Santurce, despite suffering from a gunshot wound. That fact alone shows the level of chaos and desperation in the moments after the shooting.
Trickle grid, leaving many without running water and without power for months.
Authorities later clarified that two separate reports, one for a robbery and another for gunshot victims, were ultimately linked to the same incident. Investigators now believe the group had just left the District Gentlemen's Club and requested an Uber shortly after. Somewhere along that route, they were allegedly targeted and robbed. Importantly, officials have stated that this does not appear to be a carjacking, but rather a robbery that escalated into deadly violence. That distinction is still under investigation, and authorities stress that some details remain unconfirmed. As the investigation continues, many questions remain unanswered. How the suspects followed the victims, whether the robbery was opportunistic or planned, and how many individuals were involved. What is clear, though, is that a short trip meant for relaxation and celebration turned into a fatal encounter in a matter of minutes. As we close this part of the story, we want to once again send love and condolences to the family and loved ones of Scoop Banks. A young life was lost far too soon, and another was permanently altered. This situation serves as a painful reminder of how quickly circumstances can change, especially in unfamiliar places. Let's make one thing very clear, fam. Puerto Rico is not a lawless island, and it's not a movie set either. It's a real place with real people, deep culture, real pride, and real problems that didn't just appear overnight. When you see locals rolling through red lights late at night, that's not recklessness. That's adaptation. When you see people moving low-key, no jewelry, no flash, no attention, that's not fear. That's awareness. And here's the uncomfortable truth a lot of people from the mainland don't want to talk about. Puerto Rico is American enough to follow U.S. laws, pay U.S. taxes, and use U.S. currency, but not American enough to receive the same level of protection, resources, or urgency when it comes to infrastructure, policing, and public safety. That gap is where crime finds oxygen. That gap is where people get hurt. So if you're coming from the mainland thinking island life automatically means carefree nights, strip clubs, flashy jewelry, stacks of cash, and no consequences, you're already moving wrong. Respect the land, respect the people, and most importantly, respect the rules that aren't written down. Because out here, survival isn't loud. It's quiet, it's observant, it's intentional. I'm not here to push an angle. I'm not here to sensationalize tragedy. I'm just here to give you the story, and what you do with it is on you. This was the story of a young rapper from Florida who went to Puerto Rico looking for a good time and some peace of mind, and instead lost his life after making himself a target, jewelry on display, money flashing, and guard down in the wrong place at the wrong time. If this story made you think, drop your thoughts in the comments. Have you traveled somewhere and realized too late that you didn't know the local rules? What lessons should people take from this? Let's talk about it. And if you found value in this breakdown, make sure you hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications so you don't miss the next story. Stay alert, stay respectful, and stay safe. I'll catch you guys on the next one.